Well, hello, my fellow sensitive people. It is me, your favorite oracle of whimsy, here in beautiful Bogota, Colombia, where I'm on vacation. And I have to say, altitude sickness is real. I have unfortunately been recovering from altitude sickness for the last 3 days. It's great for your waist because I've lost a ton of weight. I did do some meditation on Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I wanted to talk a little bit about Marjorie Taylor Greene. People evolve, people grow, people change. I think about all the changes I've made throughout my life, where I was in my 20s. Anybody ever remember the crazy things you believed when you were in your 20s? Part of giving people grace is allowing them to grow and evolve and become educated and to change their stance on certain things. And I think the falling out between Marjorie Taylor Greene and Donald Trump is a classic example of that, where she really did think that she was fighting the good fight, America first. And by the way, America first is a very noble cause. If you love your country and you see your country is falling, you see jobs going abroad, it is noble to want to think America first, which is why Bernie Sanders has always focused on America first and not spending our money trying to take over the world, but focusing instead on the welfare and well-being of Americans here in the United States, ending poverty, etc. There isn't much of a difference in terms of ethos or goal, the ultimate goal being what's best for America. That aspect of Marjorie Taylor Greene, we call her MTG, those are noble pursuits, and it's not something that we should attack somebody for. Everyone who loves their country is going to want their country to do well. The criticism was the MAGA movement, which Marjorie Taylor Greene has cut ties with, and now she's left the house entirely as what she calls a battered wife. And I think it's very obvious to her at this point that the reason that this is happening is because she began looking into the Epstein files and came to realize that her idol had feet of clay, that he was a predator, and that slow evolution was probably very difficult for her, considering the fact that she was so deeply part of the MAGA movement. There are other things that pulled Marjorie Taylor Greene away from MAGA. But the main issue was poverty. The fact that she is first and foremost motivated by not power. I don't agree with that. I think that that is just political bias talking. No, I truly think that in her mind, she believed that she was working to end poverty and to care for the most vulnerable. She really believed this, whether you think she was effective or not. And I think that when she saw they had no health program, that they had nothing set up, that she had to go into SCIF, and when she went in there, she found nothing, that they had no program, that their program was to dissolve the Department of Education, destroy any hope of a decent primary education, let alone a secondary education, because we're not educating our citizens, so we have to import educated people from foreign countries to do American jobs because we refuse to invest in primary and secondary education for our citizens. And if this trend continues, the overwhelming majority of people that are getting into grad school or advancing in their careers in this country will be people that are either from other countries or were homeschooled or given private educations, because we have we have completely abandoned our obligations to public education. So those really were the things that motivated her. So she, in her mind, thought that she had found the great savior that was on the same page as her, which was Donald Trump. And I know you guys are not going to like her because she did A, B, and C. When I was in my 20s, I went through a phase that was really pretty crazy. I was living in Jerusalem, on a mountain in Jerusalem, surrounded by religious extremists. And it was a world very different than the world I live today as a simple lay Buddhist Jewish person in Portland, Oregon, hippie. I evolved, I changed, which is not to say there's anything wrong if you want to be ultra-Orthodox, because that's a legitimate spiritual path too. But the point I'm trying to make is that People evolve and they change, they try things, they grow, they take college courses. And that is kind of how you have to look at Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I think we have to show her grace. It takes a lot of cojones to walk out of your job and to not have that paycheck. Now, there's been a conversation about whether or not she's going to run for Senate or not. Not if she's going to be threatened. Not if her life is in danger. Not if there are MAGA lunatics coming to kill her. And she has received a lot of death threats. You don't do something as dramatic as what Marjorie Taylor Greene has done unless you truly believe you are done with MAGA. So the idea that it was a joke or it was a con or that she was trying to manipulate people, this is not true. What is happening to Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's very, very simple, is that she is evolving and she is growing beyond where she was 8 years ago, as we all should grow, become educated, and get permission to change. But the fundamental thing that has remained for Marjorie Taylor Greene, that bond that she will always have with Democratic Socialists, which is why I really think now is the time for us to reach out to her. The thing that we share is a desire, because I'm a Democratic Socialist, full disclosure. The thing that she shares with us fellow Democratic Socialists is the people come first. The people come first, ending poverty, and taking care of your citizens before anything else. And so in that sense, I think that now is the time to send an olive branch to her and see if we cannot work together to focus on issues that affect the people of Georgia, the people in rural areas where the most extreme poverty is found, not in urban areas. Urban areas tend to have more resources than rural areas of Appalachia or Georgia or Mississippi, Tennessee. These are poor areas where we're seeing the highest rates of illiteracy, poverty, etc. And Marjorie Taylor Greene shares that anger and frustration of wanting to help the poor. And I feel in that sense we could see some kind of communication. And I'm very hopeful that Bernie Sanders will send an olive leaf, because if we can come together and stop this attacking of one another, we must stop this. This is what the British did when they conquered Palestine. You know, we never would have had civil war in Palestine if it hadn't been for the British, and I truly believe that. You know, divide and conquer. People would have learned to share. Everybody would have lived kumbaya, fine, but then the British came and they tried to divide and conquer. And that is what we see with the right-wing extremists. They try to divide and they try to conquer. And that is what we're facing right now. Can MAGA continue to divide and conquer poor people, people of color, white people, and people of color? Everybody's supposed to be fighting everybody else. And as long as we're fighting everybody else, we're not looking at where our money is going. And that's the point. The point is that there's a lot more in common between being poor, white, quote unquote, trash, and people of color have a lot in common in the sense that they've both, maybe not to the same extent, I mean, obviously, but they've both been subjugated by the people in power, exploited, betrayed, used up. And so we can form alliances there. We can form alliances and we can bring back the unions. We can bring back the unions. We can bring back the dignity of the worker. This is what the labor movement was all about, the dignity of the worker, because the worker builds the state. The worker serves the country and strengthens the country. The country takes care of the worker and the worker takes care of the country. And that's the symbiotic relationship of democratic socialism. We work to serve the state, something greater than ourselves. And then that ensures that the next generation will be taken care of. And then they do the same thing. And you have a strong state, you have a strong country when you do that. But that isn't what has happened in the United States. Instead, we're fragmented into enclaves, just like what happened in Israel with the British. They wanted everybody to isolate and not integrate. We're seeing the same thing here in the United States, calling democratic socialists libtards. The purpose is to get you to fight and hate each other. When the libtard you're attacking actually has your best interest at heart far more than they do. So, do I think that she's going to run for Senate? Not if she can't get protection. And because they've really gone after her. They're going after her the same way they went after Hillary Clinton, the same way they went after Harris. And this is a teaching opportunity for Marjorie Taylor Greene. But more than a teaching opportunity for Marjorie Taylor Greene, it's an opportunity for her to admit that she was wrong, that she has changed for the better. We applaud that, and that she's moving in the right direction. And I hope she stays safe. And this, again, this is a perfect opportunity for those of us on the left to send an olive branch and say, we share your concerns about the poor. We believe in the power of labor. We stand with labor. We stand with the unions. We stand with all Americans, regardless of how much money you have in your bank. We want this country to be a strong, healthy country for all Americans. And I think that if we do that, we'll be able to create bridges rather than boundaries. All right, I want to thank you for listening to this quick video. Be sure and share, like, subscribe, and I'll see you soon when I get back from beautiful Columbia. Take care, my loves. Bye.